Good evening, everybody. Nice to see so many people here. So, really, what we want you to just cover this evening is a bit around who I am, what the role is that I do within Morrisons, what Morrisons is, or who we are. I'm conscious that not all of you may have access to a Morrisons, or even indeed go shopping in a store. You might do all of your business online. And talk a little bit around how we've introduced some of the consumer technology that we see into our stores and improving our operating model, and give you a real life example. So I think that really, in terms of what I do, what the role is, so I'm a retail improvement manager within the business. What we do is look after productivity in our stores, and that's basically focused around how do we allocate the payroll, so which store gets how much money based upon the size, based upon the amount of challenging tasks they've got to do. It also means that we have to be really, really conscious around what we're doing. Certainly, our main driver is trying to give value to the customer. Now, I'm sure you're all aware in terms of your own businesses, things do cost money. We want to give that value to the customer, so we need to make sure that our own internal processes are as a cost-effective way as possible. So, a little bit around Morrisons, what we do. So, fourth biggest retailer in the UK. I think our main point of difference to the other three is that we primarily focus on supermarkets. So we're not yet online, or certainly not in a great scale. We've got plans to do that next year. We've only just started to get into the convenience market. We've got about 50 stores now. We're going to have 100 by the end of the year. And one of our big points of difference is that we're vertically integrated. And by that, what I mean is that we've got our own farms where we've got our own cattle that come into our own stores. We cut them up with our own butchers, we wrap them, and we sell them to the customers. And believe me, that's quite a comforting thought when you go back a couple of months ago and you see all the news in the press. So we've got that across a whole scale of things that we've got in our business. So fishmongers, bakeries, delicatessens, that's what we pride ourselves on. But it costs us a lot of money. So going back to what I mentioned before, we have to make sure that operation is as efficient as possible. So the quote from Charles Darwin there. So in terms of how we look at our operating model. So up until recently, our operating model hadn't changed that much from when it was established by Sir Ken Morrison a number of years ago. So we thought about productivity changes in terms of we're being effective, we're managing our schedules, we're devising a cost-effective network. And it's only relatively recently that we've thought about it in terms of structured process change and in terms of learning from what we can see in the consumer market in the way that we adopt our change processes and the way that we introduce new concepts to our colleagues so that we can improve the value that we give to the customer. And really, the electronic order pad we're going to show you later on, just a couple of examples around what we've done, is really how we've tried to learn from those approaches that we see in the big consumer organisations and how we've really delivered those changes. So, in the not too distant past, I'm not going to use the point, but you'll see there's some images there which I'm sure some of you will be familiar with. Certainly the pen and paper in the middle, that ruled the world when we started operating as a business. So the manual technology in terms of your cash registers that you'd see in your traditional grocer corner shops. We all started life looking at basic tools, looking at the abacus there. The generations that were operating and managing businesses were in some respects quite fearful of the technology and certainly what was being introduced to the market. I'm sure you're all familiar, everyone resists change at some stage, but there was a small minority, and for any of you asked, that isn't me from the family photo album. We're starting to learn, starting to adapt, starting to harness those changes. And I guess really the main point there is that as a colleague, as one of our employees in stores, they don't all have access to the technology that was being introduced. So they were quite resistant. So we needed to make sure that processes were simple, that they were easy to adopt, that it related back to what they did at home. So my generation certainly has kind of grown up through that, and we can see that, what you see back at school and college, university, you can see how that can benefit you when you're in your own lives. And then when you go to work, or certainly go to a Morrisons, I remember being as a student, everything is pen and paper, and you're kind of taking a step back. So what we tried to do is we tried to bridge that gap really in terms of where we're evolving our business, so that, you know, once upon a time, a lot of our colleagues would be saying, "Well, that green screen, I'm not touching that. You know, that's ridiculous. Give me a pen and paper and a telephone." And nowadays, you know, we're giving them a pen and paper and they're saying, "That's crazy. I want a touchscreen device. I want something that I can use on the go. I don't want to be sat down and tied to a chair in an office, spending hours and hours of my day re-entering information that somebody else has written on." So what we're trying to do is we're trying to capture the, I guess really the velocity of what we see in the consumer market and try and introduce that into the way that we manage the business, so that we can keep our colleagues engaged, you know, keep it as a place that you enjoy to come to work rather than just a monotonous chore because you need some money. Really, you know, that's the main focus around what we're looking at now. And you can see that, you know, today's day and age, you know, from a really young age, we're introducing technology. It's becoming the norm. You know, no longer have we got an old generation that is scared. You know, they're really embracing that technology. And, you know, certainly with Morrisons as an organisation is very family focused. So we've got a very varied age range of employees. So we need to be able to focus our operating model to all of them and make sure that we can continue to that growth and continue to build that structure and that support and grow our colleagues. What we found is that, you know, you look at the example of the iPhone, there are lots of cloud-based applications, that a lot of the technology that we see in our own private lives these days is introduced to us without a user guide. You know, you see the upgrade to, you know, iOS over the past few days. You know, yes, there are a few bits you probably need to read up on, but it's very intuitive. There's a lot of learnings that we can gain from lots of the big organisations and bring them into, you know, to the corporate business world, so that we can see, you know, how quickly we can go from concept to live. You know, as an example, you know, we would tend to take maybe 3 to 4 months just on a test cycle. You know, traditionally looking at some enhancements, we can now go from concept into pilot within that within that same duration of time, just by harnessing those learnings that we see. Okay, so here's the example. Number of folders at the top of the screen. That's what we, I guess really up until recent times, what we knew and loved as our order pad. So you'd be surprised to know that each one of those folders represents an aisle in one of our stores. You typically see that across every store, big or small. And within it, there's a number of pieces of paper that you print off once a week. And that's your order pad. That's what somebody walks around the store every day, looking through for about 30,000 products. How many do they want to deliver into the store for the next day? How do they want to maintain that availability to the customer and that service offering? So it's quite antiquated, really. I can see by looking at a few of you pulling your faces. You know, believe me, you know, it's something that's been within the organisation for a number of years. It's cherished. It's like the holy grail, because that's what sets us apart from our competitors. Competition have got lots of push systems where the products are pushed to the store based upon the sales. We don't have that. We ask for it and we get it, and we do that via this mechanism, and that's what we hold that quite dear. So, you know, we maintain those points of difference. So what you get is you get a trade-off. So you give the stores the local accountability for being able to order the product, but then your trade-off is that you've not got a specialist monitoring those sales, making sure that you're not going to maintain a minimum stock level within your warehousing. So what we wanted to do for a number of years was try and harness the benefits of our process, but enhance it, reduce some of the monotony of printing off paper once a week and then walking around for somebody else to key enter that afterwards, and reduce some of that extra, I guess really extra labour that we unnecessarily introduce in today's modern technological world. So our goal was to introduce something that was slick, something fast, that we could, I guess really, so we could ensure that the figures that we enter onto a screen are the figures that the person that's placing those orders is actually needing, rather than relying upon somebody being able to interpret the handwriting of somebody that's written it overnight. Now we knew that we needed to go mobile. We also knew that would be quite a challenge. So certainly we've had this on the agenda for a number of years. Technology, I guess, is, you know, certainly over the past couple of years is rapidly accelerated in terms of what's available. the price has gone down. But certainly over the period of when we were thinking about this, then the options were really, really difficult. In terms of, do you get a big industrial piece of kit that you can deliver into a store, for somebody to walk around? Is that the right mechanism to follow? And the answers were no. We had some significant challenges. So then we started to look on the consumer market in terms of how quickly, do you change your phone? How many of you change your phone every 12 months? Probably less than that these days. We can harness that because last year's model still suitable, it's still fit for purpose, but it's at half the price. So we knew we needed to go mobile. We knew we had some significant challenges. So what we did was we thought, right, let's look at our current process. Let's see what's the minimum amount that we need to change in order to maintain the value. So what you see on the left-hand side of the screen is just a page out of a store's order pad. It's got products listed by row. It's got historical sales information. Now this is printed once a week, so as soon as you've printed it, the sales data is inaccurate because due to the way that our network's devised, is that we'll print this on a Thursday, but we won't start using it until a Saturday, and then we'll stop using it on a Friday, ready to start the next week. You're very much reliant upon somebody looking at the state of the store, looking at the emptiness of the shelf to make sure that they're going to order enough so that we can maintain demand. And then you're also reliant upon somebody crossing out figures if they've made a mistake. Because our operation is very much focused overnight. I'm sure if some of you are aware, we don't operate a night shift. We don't operate 24-hour operation because we have a night shift that replenishes the shelves, and they focus quite a lot of detail in terms of making sure the orders are right. So what we wanted to make sure was that we were keeping that, really the momentum or the speed of order writing that the guys can use, but removing all of the niggles, removing the inaccuracies that we find when we'd then be entering it onto a system with a second member of the team. We started to look at hardware as the first point. We already had handheld scanners in our store, and we soon realised that we were quite small, certainly to replicate the amount of information that you'll see on that piece of paper. So remember the comments that you go back to what you see on your own phones or your iPads or your PCs. The amount of training that you need personally is minimal, if nothing, because it's really intuitive. Our processes in our stores needs to match that. So keep the same layout, won't fit on a small device. So then we went for a computer on wheels, affectionately known as a cow, and we've got two variations of that. One that we built ourselves, and one that we took from a local hospital. So it's functional, it does the job. It's not very practical when it's wider than the customer's shopping trolley, and she's got a young child with a trolley as well. So that was discounted as well, too big, too heavy, too clunky. What we found though was that we'd made some dramatic improvements in terms of the way that we were doing our processes. So walking around a store in York with one of these meant that we could free up that colleague that was sat upstairs waiting for pieces of paper to land on a desk ready to enter onto a PC. The order writer could do that themselves. And what we eventually decided on was a tablet. And that's actually real life examples from our store in York where we trialled the system and we trialled the concept. And along that journey of identifying the hardware, we were very conscious that do we go with a native application or do we go with a hosted one? And because there were that many devices available, we chose to, the best approach was to have a web app. I think the right terminology would be HTML5 with a little bit of Java built-in that means that we could trial a number of different devices. I think we went through about 25 different devices in total, and it's not just usability testing that we'd gone through. Believe it or not, you can actually get a consumer-graded device that if you put it on the floor and throw a tin of beans at it, you can pick it up and still use it. So, and you can't say that for your iPhones because I'm sure all of you have cracked them at some point. So, we've gone through that process trying to replicate what we do in our own lives, but also what we see our colleagues doing in our stores. So we've got some hardware. We've got a concept in terms of how we wanted to approach it. In terms of getting software into a production state, we needed to identify what was the minimum amount of effort that we needed to do, our MVP, in order to get us into a value-driven state into a store. And we started this journey in about February last year. I'm pleased to say we were in a store live in August. So with a little over 5 to 6 months, we were in store, we were live, we were production ready, and in fact the feedback from the store was, take my arm off if you're going to take the system away. It's that good, and it's that good because it feels natural. It feels like what we do at home. It feels like when we sat on the sofa watching TV. It's simple, it's easy. It's a breath of fresh air. We're not coming to work to go back a generation and write on paper. And we took a lot of value in that. Yeah, it was fantastic that we'd managed to introduce something that would save us some operating costs, but also that we'd engage the colleagues a lot more than we'd thought as well. And what we've been doing ever since, really, is from that first pilot, we've been learning, developing, testing, deploying, learning, listening, developing, more testing, more deploying, and we're able to do that roughly every 2 weeks. And those are simple changes that can give us lots of benefits. And what it means is that we don't have to go down the route of sending, well, we've got about 500 stores within the business, so if you imagine that we have to send a trainer to each one of those, I'm sure you can understand that's quite an expensive overhead to have to manage every time you do a software release. So we can just do that with some small communications via email. It's very simple. You can see it on the device. You pick it up and you go. I'm pleased to say that we're in 300 stores now, and that's took us a little over 12 months to do. And the plan is certainly if any of you go to one of your local Morrisons around the London area, you'll see our colleagues using them by the end of October. So that's just an example of what the finished product looks like. So it's quite intricate really for a web application, I think. It's certainly a lot more detailed than what you'd see on your typical Gmail account or Yahoo. But it's all running, in our central cloud. It's all running remotely. Our devices just connect to it. We can access it from anywhere. We've maintained the principles of you've got a week's worth of an order to view. So our colleagues can still see sales information, which is, there we go, there. It's the same information that they know, that they're used to, that they're familiar with. The order writing process doesn't change. They're just using a different device that's replacing the paper. In fact, in the background, it's sending the information to the same distribution centre and to the same depots, and they're consistently using the same processes they have done for the past 30 years. But we're improving that process so much in the store that they're now asking us for extra features. So they're asking us to integrate signage requisition so that whilst they're placing their orders and they see that a product's on promotion, they can request a sign because that's missing, rather than having to go back to an office to print that off or to carry around separate pieces of paper. They're asking us to replicate their scanning information so they can see on one consistent device what does my warehouse look like today versus what I've got on my shelf. So all that information is all really, really easy and really straightforward to display to the colleagues, and it's giving us lots of value. And as you can see there, they're really happy. Okay, which is pleasing to see. I'm sure none of you have ever seen a disgruntled colleague in one of our stores. But on a more serious note, it's really, really pleasing that our colleagues enjoy the activities that we're asking them to do, because believe me, this is a time-consuming process. We spend in excess of 20 hours a week order writing, more or less for every aisle in the store. It's really time-consuming, but we want to make sure that we give the right offer to you. We treat you as our customers. So we've improved that colleague engagement, which means they're more inclined to do a good job. We've halved the amount of time that it would have traditionally took us to get to market or to get into our operating model. And we've actually seen some increased savings. So the side pieces that I just showed on the previous screen. So that saves us additional operating costs. It allows us to focus on what really matters, and that's what's giving the value to our customer. And I'm sure Ian and Nima noticed that we have happy colleagues as well that are actually doing the work for us. Steph's one of the ladies from the Manchester ThoughtWorks office, and what we found is that we're actually engaging other areas of the business. So our IT colleagues, who would traditionally say to me, "You're ridiculous, Steve, I'm not doing that, we've got 50 other things to be doing," actually want to do this. They think it's exciting, they think it's, you know, leading edge. Absolutely engaged 100%. We've seen other business areas, marketing teams, PR teams, colleague engagement, all wanting to harness the technology that we've introduced into stores. I'm sure that you will be able to see those improvements as well. And what it means is that we've actually got a technology platform for the future. So, granted this is quite a big device, you probably can't hold it in your hand and walk it around the store, but you've got an order pad application. You can tailor it to fit the user, so you can see what your roster is if you want to see, when am I going to get more colleagues into the store? When am I going to get somebody to come and fill the shelf for me? I can track my sales. I can understand if I'm above or below the market. I can look at my excess cases. I can look at what's due to be delivered. And I can do all of that from the shop floor, where I can maintain that service to the customer, rather than traditionally walking away from hours at end and sitting behind a screen in an office locked to a chair. And it also means that you can see things when you're talking about them. You don't have to be remembering what you've seen on the shelf or what you've seen in the warehouse. You can actually take your data to the point of origin. Thank you very much.